the basic division that organizes our school, our graduate school, is between interpreting and translating. Traditionally, localization has come along to complicate things, but we'll look at that tomorrow. I want to challenge that basic division, and my reason is this, that nobody loves theory, nobody likes theory. Every practitioner knows that they have got the correct way of doing it, and you don't need a stupid academic to come in with big ideas and theory and research to mess up your certitude. Okay? And that's everybody. That's the translators and the interpreters and the localizers. They all hate what I'm doing. I can live with that. But it's the conference interpreters who are the most trenchant in their opposition and resistance. And that's why I'm especially interested in interpreting at the moment, and particularly conference interpreting. Now, I propose that the one-term translation should include both the oral rendition and the written rendition. That is, what's traditionally called translating and interpreting. Because I propose that the two are basically the same activity, and they differ not in kind, but in degree. I will not prove this to you, I don't have time, but I'll just make you worry about this for a few minutes at least. And this is important because it means, I believe, that everything I say about in translation as written production can be applied to oral production and vice versa. I don't think there's any need at all for separate theories. I will prove to you now that even the theorists of interpreting know that there's no difference. Because the main theorists of what's called the Paris School, or the theory of sense, théorie du sens, which has worked on interpreting, one of the main books is called Interpréter pour traduire, Interpret to Translate. And that book does nothing but take the theory they developed by looking at conference interpreters, and they propose that it's a good theory for the whole of translation. So I rest my case. A theorist of interpreting say this. That's one group. Other people, now and then, including myself, but I was not the first, who are concerned with how we train you, how we train translators and interpreters, have proposed that our training should begin from oral work. That instead of getting you to translate in the written mode, we should put you into an oral, spoken situation with real participants and a real client and a real listener, so that you break with what's known as primitive literalism. You know, when people don't know anything about translation, they start off as close to the text as possible. They don't want to deviate from it. They say, oh, can I? Can I use a different tense? Can I leave something out? And they feel very upset about this. But if you're doing it in the spoken situation, it's obvious that you can, because you have to. You have to explain some things. You have to make them clear. You have to leave out some things that are irrelevant. You have to clean up the discourse. That is, the spoken situation, and here I'm not talking about the conference interpreting, I'm talking about between real people, teaches us what we should be doing in all forms of translation. That is, communicating between people and not reproducing a text. Those theorists would also agree with my proposition that it's a difference not in nature but in degree. This wonderful institution has long had a very peculiar practice, which is called sight translation. But it could be sight interpreting. It is, by definition, an overlap thing. Okay? Whenever you do that, you are proving to yourself that there's no real difference between the written and the spoken. Think about it when you're doing it. Now you say, we come into some difficult things. People who don't like my proposition, that the difference is degree and not kind, will say that conference interpreters can produce simultaneously, right? And translators cannot. Good argument? All right. Just watch this, and you will see that in written translation, there are moments when the hands are typing and the eye is looking at the source text. Just the same way these great conference interpreters are doing right now. Simultaneity, double cognitive activity, if the technology works. There you go, look, simultaneity. Did you see it? There again. Typing and looking. Yes, sir. Come on, hurry, make up your mind. No problems on this one. Oh, you don't know what to do now. Okay, small simultaneity then. Okay, there were at least 2 moments of significant simultaneity in the written mode. Okay? Do you want to see it again, or you don't believe me? You're all convinced, right? Yes. You're convinced, yeah? There is simultaneity in written production. With the simultaneity, it's also an obvious argument. You do consecutive interpreting. That doesn't have simultaneity. So, what are we talking about? People say that when you're interpreting, you can't correct, like you can when you translate. Well, no. There are things called repairs. They have a name in interpreting theory. When interpreters do, if they make a mistake, they do correct themselves. So it does happen. Once again, difference in degree, not in kind. What's the other thing? Nothing else. I think that's it, isn't it? There is, I admit, that job satisfaction. At the end of a day of interpreting, you go out the booth and nobody can get at you. Okay? Whereas in written translation, the text is still there, and 3 years later somebody will find your mistakes. Is that a fundamental difference? No, because as soon as somebody records your rendition when you're interpreting, they'll come back and get the recordings. So once again, it's not a basic ontological distinction. I think that what happens in the world is that there are different fees that, to interpreters, have us all hoodwinked into believing that there's some kind of magic in their skills that normal humans can't do, and that's why they should be paid $100 an hour more than anybody else. Hence all the theory, and the presupposition that this is an entirely different activity. And that difference itself is being challenged with the growth of public service interpreting, legal interpreting, medical encounters interpreting, where the big fees are not there and the magic is not there. So the kind of tension that I'm alluding to, this mystique, really is the mystique of conference interpreting, which is entering into social debates now with other forms of interpreting, let alone written translation. Yes?
But what about the big component of performance that's in the interpreting, whereas it's not in the translation?
That's the other thing. You think that there's no time pressure for translators.
Well, of course there's time pressure, but
you're
not faced with an audience that's, expecting...
Yes, we are.
Well,
You've got to look at the localization industry and the ridiculous time pressure we're under. They want this text in by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. I work all night, it gets in there, okay. And they're waiting for it. Isn't that a performance? Just because people can't see, but they can't see you because you're in the back of the room anyway. Okay, degree, not kind.
yeah, okay.
But the original supposition was translators have all the time in the world. Not the translators that I'm training. Not for where you're going. An academic literary translator perhaps will have that luxury. But time pressure is extreme in translation. And even more so with the translation technologies. Okay, I'm going to go too far there, because this is just a prelude to what I want to say. all the theories that I'm talking about have been applied to interpreting. Okay? Franz Perkhake, in his early work, applied Skopos theory, the theory of purpose, to interpreting, when he looked at the role of the conference interpreter within a macro text, which was the conference itself, and tried to figure out the action of the conference interpreter and the purposes, not with respect to the source text or the speech that they were rendering, but with respect to their function in the event of a conference. This was quite a radical application of the theory. We describe what interpreters do, so the descriptive theories all work. Obviously, I gave you some examples last week, or on Tuesday. Here is one that I mentioned, though, which is sort of the theory that's dominated the training of interpreters, known in French as théorie du sens. French people, how would you translate that?
Meaning theory.
Meaning theory, is that it? Do you all agree? Where are you? Francophones. Meaning theory? Everybody? Theory of meaning? Theory of meaning? Meaning theory. I mean theory. Anything else? Sorry? Sensible theories. I wish there were. Okay, the basic theory is pretty simple, and you find it, we apply to theories, but interpreting, but you find it in Eugene Nida as well, with regard to Bible translation. It's that a message comes in, we de-verbalize it, we get rid of the form so we get the meaning, and then we re-verbalize on the other side. Okay? That's the basic theory, and they propose that it happens everywhere. Empirically, it doesn't. But when you're working between cognate languages, okay, if you work out between Romance languages, often you don't. You stick on the level of form because it's close enough. You don't have to do a massive decoding. But between Indo-European and Asian languages, great theory. I think there is significant decoding and recoding. My problem is this, though. I always thought it was the theory of meaning. Le sens is meaning. Meaning theory is good too. But now I'm seeing it called the theory of sense. In fact, Marijn Lederer, when authorizing the translation into English, uses that term, the theory of sense. Now getting back to it, is meaning sense? What is sense? What is meaning? What's the opposite of sense? Nonsense. Nonsense. Good. So if I'm interpreting somebody who's saying a lot of nonsense, this theory is not going to work, because I have to decode it into sense and reproduce the sense. No, not quite. What's the opposite of meaning? Meaningless, but everything that's said is meaningful. And then, if I think about it, how do I know that whatever this sense or meaning is, how can I have it without any form? What is it when it's deverbalized? Have you anybody seen a meaning walking around, or a sense? Can we know that it's there?
Gibberish.
Gibberish? Talking in tongues? You know, that would happen. But it's a wonderfully idealistic theory, because nobody could say it's wrong, because nobody's seen it be right. You know what I mean? I don't think there is any meaning or any sense that doesn't have a linguistic form. And when you look at the theories, and they explain it, they say, and you get the meaning, and they draw a little picture, you know, or a little symbol. Horse, cheval, a little picture of the horse, and then horse, caballo, whatever you want, pferd. Sorry, I don't know horse in Chinese and Japanese, but you feel it, okay? But that's crazy, because that little picture is linguistic, or semiotic. It's a form. You know, it's a language. There's a language of symbols there. There is no way of isolating meaning or sense, or whatever you want to call it, from the forms we use to conceptualize them and to communicate them. I propose. However, my problem is that what is meaning, sens, signification? The many different words that could be used there. You know, why I'm unhappy with the dominant mode of thought about interpreting, and the dominant mode is that interpreters are great, by definition, and I've done interpreting, so I'm great too, that's okay. Because they get the meaning, or the sense, or the signification, or whatever. Now, the real problem is nobody gets meaning.